to lesson 7, part 2 of using the bowl gouge. I want to show you the tools that we introduced last time. This is the one I use mostly for spindle work. We're not going to use that. It's too short a handle for what we're going to be doing today. I'm going to be using my double end, which has a nice long handle, so 3/8 gouge. And this one, which is also called a 3/8, but a little bit smaller, and I might find reasons to want to use either of these. Later in this lesson, I'm going to introduce what we call the bottom feeder, which is ground entirely differently. Now, one of the questions that comes up a lot in bowl turning and looking at gouges is, what angle is this bevel? And I actually looked today before I came over to make this video for a protractor so I can measure it. The answer is, I don't know. But the bevel has two values, not so much the angle, but the fact that you can repeat it every time you sharpen, so you always get the same grind each time without grinding away a lot of unnecessary metal. And number two, that it fits the project you're trying to turn, allowing you to rub the bevel, as we talked about before, all the way down to and through the center of the bowl. Let me illustrate that. I'm going to go to the whiteboard here for a second and kind of show you what I mean by bevel has to match the project. So let's step over to the whiteboard for a minute. Here we are at the whiteboard, and I want to illustrate the point I made about having a bevel angle to match the project. Here's a fairly large, shallow bowl. So if I'm going to ride the bevel as I come down this curve, I can make it all the way to the center without the handle running into the rim and interfering. But on a smaller bowl, like I have drawn here to the left, if I start that same cut and come around here, I'm going to run into the rim of the bowl because this bevel doesn't allow me to get all the way to the center. And so for this bowl, I'm going to need a shorter bevel angle to do it. And this one I can get away with a longer bevel angle. So on our deep bowls, where the bowls may be even deeper than this, I'm going to use what we call a bottom feeder, which is simply a bowl gouge with a very, very short bevel. And at the end of turning the inside of our demo bowl today, I'll show you how that tool actually gets the job done. Are there other ways to do it? Yes, and we'll cover those later in another lesson. So let's get back to the lathe, set up our project, start our cuts, and then complete the inside of this bowl. Let's take a look at the blank that we cut in the last lesson. Remember, we turned the exterior shape, put a good tenon on it, and now I have the chuck on the lathe, and we're going to mount that bowl into the chuck. A little pressure straight down to keep those shoulders tight. This is a compression chuck, which means I tighten both holes, and I want to get a good grip on this. Okay. And it's running fairly true, but it's a little out of round just because it's been a while since we worked on it last. So I'm going to bring the tool rest over. I'm going to come around and make one shearing, scraping cut in the back, just simply to be sure that this is back as round and true as we can get it. My RPM still is around 1500. This is that shearing cut, handles down. I'm going to be using the bottom edge of the tool against the bowl, not the top. And I'm going to just make a pull cut from the bottom up. And if you can hear, you hear a slight vibration, and that's the outer roundness that this piece of poplar has developed. Well, there's a little bit of vibration. So all I've done is trued up the outside again. So now this is running true to that axis of the lathe. So we're going to start working on the inside. Bring my tool rest around. And one of the things I always do, and that is, well, first of all, I want to see if I'm at center. And if I look at the bowl rotation and the position of the tool, I'm about 1/8 of an inch too high. So I'm going to drop the tool rest just a bit. and get it right through the center. There we go. Now, to make these cuts inside, what's important to me is we start off with a flat face. The flat face so that my tool doesn't bounce as I try to engage in some type of internal cut. So first I'm going to do is face the bowl. Handles down. The gouge is open to 45 degrees. Remember, 0, 45, 90. 90 is too hard. 0 is not enough, so we split the difference. And I'm going to start at the center, handle down on my hip, and I'm just going to lean back. Very similar to that 3-part rule of 45s cut we did in the last lesson. So this is about getting the face flat. One thing I need to do, that's better. Okay, the purpose of that was just to get the surface flat so we can begin to do our internal cuts. I'm going to suggest for new or inexperienced bowl turners that maybe we start by making little tiny bowls in the middle and working our way out to larger bowls. More practice cuts, more time to develop your skill. In the future, there are other ways you can do that, but let's start off. Now here's what happens many times. If we set the gouge down at some angle like this, and this bowl is turning, it's going to want to throw the gouge out. If I turn it too far over, it's going to pull it in. So what I want to do is to engage this part of the cutting edge right here with the tool exactly at 90 degrees, coming in like this. What that's going to do is just create a little bit of a groove. Once the groove is established, the tool has a place to ride. It's supported there, it's supported here on the tool rest, and my hand out here flopping around in the open air is going to have less impact. And then I'm going to open it up and come forward like this. Down, around, and then to the center. Down, around, and to the center. That's what it's going to look like. Let's make a little one. So my handle is way behind the lathe. Not here, but way behind the lathe. The flute is vertical here, and my thumb is behind the tool, and I'm going to push straight in. And if I stop right there, you'll see that all I've done is create a small groove, but a groove that the tip of the tool can now set in. And so I go into that groove, my thumb is behind the tool, I pull my hand forward, and my left hand pushes the tool through the center. So I'm going to start behind, down, around. As soon as my hand is parallel with the, right here, I'm going to stop, bring it forward, and then start pushing with my thumb. Take that bottom push now right in there. Here it is again. Down. Around. And across. Now, it started to skate back on me. Guess why? I had the tool very slightly turned this way and it wanted to grab it. So my problem was I didn't have it rotated far enough towards the vertical. So towards the vertical. Now, this is straight. So now all I'm going to do is hold my right hand steady and push forward with my left hand like this to get rid of that mass in the center. Now here else I can come around. And you notice those last 3 cuts. This stayed exactly the same, and I just pushed to get rid of that mass in the center. Down, around, now I was able to get all the way to the bottom by simply swinging because I had enough room to work. Down, around. It's riding very nicely against the wood itself. Well, I didn't get it all. So keeping my right hand steady, I come back and take away a lot of this extra wood in the center. So I'm going to continue with this cut for a few more times until I get out, oh, maybe someplace along in there. And then we're going to show you how to start cleaning this up to the right dimension. I'm just taking out unnecessary wood at the moment. Now I'm getting a little deeper, and as I get deeper, the thumb behind here isn't holding this thing down steady on the tool rest. So I started my cut this way, and because the tool's hanging over farther, it has more leverage. So I'm going to put my hand on top to give it additional support down against the tool rest after I get started. Here's the start. Open the tool up. And it's a smoother cut because I kept it solid against the tool rest. So we still make a few more cuts, and we'll be back to you in a few minutes. Here's a change I'm going to make. Now that I'm getting down a little bit, I'm going to angle the tool rest to go inside. Shortens the distance between the tool and the bowl surface. So rotate your tool rest. Okay, not quite as far as I said I'd go, but this is fine. I've got a nice smooth surface here because I was constantly keeping the bevel of the tool against the surface of the wood. Good support. Now, if I go too deep and the bottom starts getting thin, I can't come back and work successfully on this rim. So I'm going to stop doing that, and I'm going to come out here and take this down to what I consider to be the final dimension. And I'm only going to work down about 1 inch. And once that's done, then I'll go down another inch. So now the goal is simply to work this to the right outside diameter. So I'm going to... Well, that's not quite an inch. That's good enough. Now the other thing I'm doing is I cut and move this tool around here. I'm looking at the outside of the bowl, and I'm trying to approximate that same curve. So I start here, and it looks like it's going down about that angle. And yeah, I'm guessing, but I've done this enough that my guesses are somewhat accurate. Now I have to decide how thick is the wall of this bowl to be. If I want it this thick, then I'm there except for whatever the parallel inside and outside edge of matchup looks like. Or I can take it just a little farther. I want to take it just a little thinner than this. And before I go further down in here, my goal is to make sure that these edges are parallel. And by feeling with my fingers, I can tell that it's getting thicker as it goes down. So I need to go down more and around less. So I'm going to start at the top and take a little bit more off the bottom. Getting there, not yet. That feels to my fingers good enough to start. I'm going to get calipers in a couple minutes and start measuring, but I'm ready to go down a little bit farther and then blend the second depth cut to the first one. So I'm going to continue down another inch. There's a lot of little ridges in here left over from when I stopped all those cuts before. It's a great place to set my tool for the next set of cuts. Getting a little thicker at the bottom again. So from here down I need to take a little bit more off. Getting close. That's better. Now, you notice as I came down towards the bottom, that edge of the tool is getting pretty near to this high stacked wood here. So I got to be careful not to run into that and make the cut. So I'm going to check it one more time, make one cut from the top all the way down, try to blend that together. Straight edge. I tried to do that in one cut to smooth up and reduce any transition between first set of cuts, second set of cuts. It's okay. So I need to go a little further down and work into the center a little bit more. On that last cut, the tool started bouncing a little bit in my hand. I couldn't hold it steady enough. I'm farther over the tool rest at that point than I am here or over here. So the solution is take lighter cuts. Well, I'm to a place now where it's getting harder for my fingers to reach around and measure. I can still reach here, but not as well as I did before. So I'm going to get a set of calipers. The figure 8 calipers are the easiest ones to use, and I can actually check to see how uniform my wall is. I think it's still getting a little thicker towards the bottom, and I'm going to take one more cut, and then I'm going to turn and to go get a set of calipers and check with something more mechanical. I don't know why I do that. I feel like I can slow the lathe down by holding onto the bowl. But you notice I have my hand on the outside, steadying the cut. If I was doing a very thin-walled bowl, this edge would start to vibrate and I need to hold it. That's why I did the shear scraping on the outside before I reversed it into this lesson, so that I can put my hand here without the chance of burning my fingers or catching a splinter. So I'm going to stop a second. I'm going to go get some calipers and we're going to start taking some measurements here and seeing what we need to do to finish this project off. Be back. I went over and got a pair of figure-8 calipers. These close here and represent the same dimension down here, so I can actually check the wall thickness pretty easily. And it's pretty uniform until I get right down to this very bottom there. I can see them moving just in that last little bit. It's off maybe a 1/16 or less. So what I'm going to do is just remember that and come back here and continue to remove this mass here until I can get down here and check the bottom like this. So to clean that up later, I'm going to use this bottom feeding tool I mentioned earlier. But right now I'm just going to take out some of this mass. So continuing with what I'd start. Same cut, tool at 45 degrees. I want to be able to go through the center. I'm checking against the center, looks good. And now, a lot of cuts here is simply a matter of me pushing this tool at a 45-degree angle just across the tool rest. I just have to take away wood that I don't need. Right hand isn't moving. Now, another thing you might think about before you take any more out of here, if you're going to decorate this rim, if you're going to radius it, if you're going to do anything to the rim, now's the best time. As this mass comes out of here, this becomes more flexible. As it becomes more flexible, you'll have a harder time cutting on it. I'm going to do 2 cuts like this, and all I'm doing is moving into that shear scraping mode and breaking the corner on this edge, because you run your hand against this sharp edge, I guarantee you, you can cut yourself on a piece of wood. Just that. Just that. And while it still looks sharp, it's not going to cut me by some accident of mine. So back to cutting away more wood here. 45 degrees, handles horizontal. Now, as you move towards the center, the wood is moving slower and slower. We talked about that in the lesson a long time ago. The difficulty is that I want to continue to push at the same speed. Remember, I have to slow down as I get closer to the center. So I'm keeping pressure against the wood and allowing it to come around and cut itself. If I push real hard, yeah, I can tear the fibers out. Why do I need to do that? I'm getting close to the bottom, and I now need to know how thick is this. See there, that's where I'm starting the bottom cut. You can see the calipers move. If I come down here and measure, my wall thickness at the bottom is about right. I've just got mass right in this corner that has to be taken out. And I can come in here with this gouge. Well, technically I could finish it with this gouge, but I'm not going to. I'm going to go to the tool I introduced to you last week but didn't use, which is called a bottom feeder. The bevel on this one is very acute And to match the bevel, the handle has to come out like this. And I'm riding the bevel, the handle is here, not way over like this. So I can use this then to finish this cut up. Little spot right in the center I want going. What I want you to see is the difference in the angle. Where before with this tool, it's coming around like this. With this tool, I'm at the bottom with the handle almost horizontal. Got a lot of control. I'd have a little more control had I turned this in a little bit farther. But basically, I've got a roughed out bowl in here. Maybe a little cleanup cut. Just maybe one. Very light. Now, since we've left some ridges in here and a couple of spots, in our next lesson, I'm going to introduce you to the bowl scraper, a tool that will clean up the inside very, very easily and very safely, but it still has a learning curve and some things you need to learn about it. So we've cleaned up the inside, we've turned the outside, and we're going to do our final part of the bowl with our bowl scraper in our next lesson. See you then.